The main lobby of Vance Tower looked like a cathedral made of glass and marble. Everything gleamed cold, immaculate, so much so that the people inside seemed as if they had stepped out of a financial magazine. The sound of leather shoes echoed on stone floors. The air was filled with the scent of premium coffee mingled with luxurious perfume. Employees in Armani suits smiled faintly, gliding past one another like gods who didn't touch the ground. Here, your presence was only acknowledged if you shone. Eleanor Vance entered quiet as a shadow. Her slightly wrinkled white shirt, oversized slacks, and worn-out flats made her look like a lost delivery worker. In her hands was a paper tray holding 2 hot coffees and a croissant. No one noticed her. That was exactly how she wanted it. She was trying to find the new employee area when a booming voice called out behind her. "Tell the Saudis we're not lowering the bid. If they want in, they pay full price." A tall man in an expensive grey suit was walking while talking on the phone, not watching where he was going. His shoulder slammed into Eleanor. The coffee tray jolted into the air. One cup tipped and hot brown liquid spilled onto her white shirt, spreading in blotches. Eleanor froze. The heat of the coffee soaked through the fabric, but that burn was nothing compared to the stares around her. People looked up, then looked away, some chuckling quietly. The man stopped and glanced at her like he was looking at a stain. "Watch it, sweetie," he growled. "This suit costs more than your rent." Then he turned and walked off without a word of apology. Eleanor said nothing. She set the paper tray down on a nearby waiting bench and calmly took out a napkin, beginning to dab at the coffee stains in a mechanical rhythm. Not rushed, not shaking. Her fingers moved slowly, like she was disarming a bomb, one wire at a time. In her mind, there was no scream, only a single thought. This is it, the first symptom. She looked around. No one cared. No one asked. In the building that still bore the name of the man she loved, a proud ecosystem had grown, one where people had become tools. What would Michael say if he saw this, she asked herself. He'd be disappointed? No, he'd be furious. And that's why I'm here. Eleanor picked up the coffee tray, turned and walked toward the service elevator. Her face was expressionless, but in her eyes there was a glint as cold as steel. A battle had begun, and she had just spotted her first enemy. The main elevator sat at the center of the lobby, a polished block of steel opening with the grace of heaven's gates. Eleanor walked toward it, still clutching the coffee tray, her shirt stained and damp. As she neared, the click-clack of high heels rang out like tiny gunshots across the marble floor. Tiffany Sterling appeared flanked by 3 female employees, dressed as if they had stepped straight out of a luxury fashion campaign. She stopped right in front of the elevator, arms crossed, tilting her head as she assessed Eleanor like a smudge on the floor that needed to be scrubbed clean. "Excuse me?" Tiffany raised an eyebrow, her voice soft but hiding a blade beneath velvet. "The service elevator is down the hall. We're trying to maintain a certain brand image here, you understand." She emphasized the word image, then glanced sideways at her entourage. They all giggled, not loudly, but sharp enough to cut. One of the women coughed lightly behind her hand, failing to mask the laughter. Eleanor remained silent. Her gaze met Tiffany's, not angry, not afraid, just steady. She gave a small nod, then turned away. The service elevator was at the end of the hallway, its flickering light caught between 2 worlds. Eleanor stepped inside. The doors closed slowly with a dry, metallic click. Inside, the air was cold. It smelled of cleaning solution and the faint odor of trash not yet hauled to the basement. The elevator buttons were scratched, and the floor indicator was dim. It was the opposite of the perfection outside. An elevator for the ones not meant to be seen, Eleanor thought. She wasn't angry. She was observing. As the elevator gave a soft jolt and began to rise, Eleanor glanced toward the glass door behind her. In the shimmer of metal and light, she caught the eyes of a man. David Chen, head of IT, stood quietly near the reception area. He didn't move. He didn't speak. But his eyes found her not with pity, not with curiosity, but with recognition. A faint nod, almost imperceptible. But Eleanor saw it. He knows who I am. In that moment between two worlds, one of shadows and one of light, a fragile thread was stitched back together. No words, no signs, but it meant something. Not everything is rotten. Eleanor tightened her grip on the coffee tray, her spine straighter. She was still invisible, but the ghost of the Vance family had been seen. And that was the first step. Night fell over Manhattan. The glass windows of Vance Tower reflected the city's dazzling lights, a sleepless maze of glass and motion. But inside the building was slowly swallowed by silence. Most employees had gone home. The floors stood empty. Elevators ceased automatic function. Only the soft hum of the HVAC system remained, like the tired breathing of an aging machine. In a dark, unlit office, Eleanor sat alone. She had put her coat back on. Her sleeves were still damp. David Chen had handed her a master access card, along with an encrypted tablet he had quietly prepared in advance. She didn't ask why he helped. He didn't need to explain, just a silent nod between those on the same side. Eleanor powered on the tablet. A pale blue light illuminated her focused face, sharpening every strong line. The screen revealed the internal system, emails, expense reports, and contract data. She began. Her fingers moved lightly across the screen. A $4,000 wine bill from a private restaurant, filed under internal client entertainment. She traced the signature, Chadwick Harrington. A budget file for a strategic PR campaign listing 5 separate vendors, all owned by the same shell company, registered in Delaware under the name Tiffany Sterling. Money bleeding from the company like an open wound. Eleanor opened a thread of encrypted emails between the PR department and a major media partner. The content was vague, but through note attachments, she pieced together a rebranding campaign in full swing, an effort to prepare for the sale of the entire research and development division. She paused. Her eyes locked onto a file titled Draft R&D Transfer Confidential. She tapped to open it. As the content loaded, Eleanor leaned back in her chair. She didn't blink. There it was. In plain words, Vance Innovations was negotiating the sale of its entire R&D division to its main competitor, a company that had once stolen Michael's ideas. A memory surfaced. Michael's sleeves rolled up, speaking with a gleam in his eyes about the little lab. This is the soul of the company, Ellie. If we lose it, the name on this building means nothing. She closed her eyes just for a second, then opened them again and began downloading the entire file archive. They think I'm just a ghost, Eleanor thought. No, I'm the immune system. The Monday morning all-hands meeting was held in the grand auditorium of Vance Tower. Nearly 300 employees sat in straight rows beneath cold white lights. On stage, CEO Arthur Sterling read from a prepared speech, his words smooth, safe, and utterly hollow. We're not selling, we're optimizing. No cutbacks, only agile restructuring. Eleanor sat near the back row, silent as part of the wall itself. She wore the same white shirt, freshly laundered from the day before, and held a notebook like a diligent intern. When the Q&A session began, the room sank into awkward silence. No one wanted to go first. Eleanor stood. A question for the leadership, she said clearly, her voice steady and firm. If the R&D department generated over 70% of patents in the past 5 years, why is it now considered no longer aligned with the growth strategy? Heads turned. Chad Harrington, standing next to the CEO, frowned, a beat of hesitation. Then he laughed. Who let the catering staff ask questions? Laughter rippled from a few rows near the front. Chad stepped off the stage, clearly aiming to shut down the Q&A his way. As he passed a staff member carrying a tray of champagne, he deliberately bumped his elbow. Glass shattered. A wave of cold champagne poured down on Eleanor. She stood still. The liquid soaked her hair, streamed down her collar, and seeped through the white fabric of her shirt. No one spoke. Only the sound of dripping champagne and strained breathing filled the room. A few winces, a few smirks. Then a deadly silence. Arthur Sterling remained seated, his face stiff. He said nothing. No intervention, no reaction. Eleanor didn't flinch. She didn't wipe herself, didn't move away. She simply stood tall. Her eyes locked onto Chad, then shifted to Arthur, a gaze so cold it could cut glass. So this is the culture you allow, Arthur. You once called Michael a hero, and now you sit there like you see nothing. She calmly stepped away from the stage area, each wet footstep landing with a heavy, deliberate sound. She said nothing more, but in her mind, everything was crystal clear. No more guessing. It's time to act. The conference room door shut behind her with a decisive click. Eleanor didn't go to change. Her white shirt, soaked in champagne, clung to her skin, the stench of alcohol still sharp in the air. But she didn't care. Each step echoed on the marble floor like a ticking clock counting down. David Chen was waiting in the IT room, the door already open. No greetings needed. He handed her an encrypted laptop connected to a private network. The webcam light turned on. 3 faces appeared on the screen, the remaining original co-founders of Vance Innovations, the ones who had once built the company from a garage with Michael. All 3 had been quietly pushed aside after his death. Eleanor didn't start with a complaint. She simply shared her screen-falsified budget reports, forged contracts, internal emails revealing the intent to sell the R&D division, and finally, the security footage, her public humiliation, and the CEO's silent complicity. Silence followed. After a moment, the silver-haired man bowed his head and sighed. I never thought Arthur would let it come to this. The second man winced. Vance Innovations wasn't built to become a circus. The third looked Eleanor in the eye. Ellie, what do you need? She didn't blink. Your proxy votes, now. There was no pushback. All 3 nodded almost in unison. David's hands moved quickly, transmitting the electronic proxy forms. One by one, 3 digital signatures appeared clean fast, without hesitation. Eleanor sat up straight. In that small, quiet room, there was no applause, no fanfare. But the balance of power had shifted. She took a deep breath. The smell of alcohol still clung to her clothes, but inside her, something else had taken its place: control. Michael, I'm back at the table, and this time I'm finishing the game. 9:00 a.m. The 50th floor boardroom, reserved only for those who made the highest decisions, sat in tense silence. Chad Harrington and Tiffany Sterling entered first. Both were laughing casually, as if the meeting were nothing more than a dull formality. Wonder what Champagne Girl's doing today, Chad whispered to Tiffany. Probably crying over dry cleaning bills, she chuckled, crossing her legs like she was lounging in a salon. Arthur Sterling sat at the head of the table, his face pale, fingers fidgeting with a pen like it might help him control time. At exactly 9:00, the door opened. Eleanor walked in, no longer the Eleanor with the coffee tray and wrinkled shirt. She wore a dark grey tailored suit. Her hair was pinned up neatly. Her heels struck the carpet with crisp, confident clicks. Her face showed no anger, just cold. So cold the temperature in the room seemed to drop. David Chen followed silently, holding a laptop. No one dared speak. Eleanor walked to the head of the table, Arthur's seat. Arthur stood awkwardly, stepping aside. No words were needed. His body already understood what was happening. Eleanor sat. David connected the laptop to the large screen. No introductions, no preamble. The screen lit up. It was the footage from the all-hands meeting. Chad spilling champagne. Eleanor soaked. Arthur is doing nothing. The angles changed: front view, overhead side cameras from backstage. The audio was sharp. The splash of wine, the sneakers, and the silence. When the video ended, Eleanor stood. Her voice rang out clear, unwavering, without needing to shout. Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eleanor Vance. This company bears my late husband's name. And as of 8:45 this morning, as the majority shareholder, I am assuming the role of acting chairwoman. A beat of silence. Then Eleanor turned to Chad. Her eyes sliced like a scalpel. Chadwick, she said slowly, you're fired. Chad opened his mouth to protest, but no sound came. She turned to Tiffany. Tiffany, you're fired. Tiffany's jaw dropped, hands trembling, but she said nothing. Finally, Eleanor looked at Arthur, the man who once called Michael a friend. Arthur, she said softly, like a breeze, I accept your resignation. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence hung thick, as if the entire tower had stopped breathing. Eleanor sat down. This time, she didn't need a commanding stare. She didn't need to prove anything. She was powerful. The montage begins. First scene. Chad Harrington, pale-faced, clutching a cardboard box, walks through the main lobby of Vance Tower. A security guard trails behind him. His $10,000 leather shoes clack sharply against the floor, no longer confident, just hurried. Every eye follows him. No one speaks. Next, Tiffany Sterling, once flawless, with her cascading blonde hair now disheveled, drags a suitcase out of the elevator. Her makeup can't hide the confusion on her face. A coffee cup slips from her hand and shatters. No one bends down to help. Arthur Sterling leaves the building last. He wasn't fired. He walks out in silence, holding an old briefcase. His back is hunched as if bearing the weight of 1,000 regrets. The montage shifts. The large boardroom, once a battlefield, is now a space of hope. Eleanor stands before the full staff. No soaked white shirt. No silence. She looks at each person as if every face matters. I didn't come for revenge, she says. I came to rebuild what never should have been broken. Silence. I've terminated the R&D sale, she continues. And not only are we keeping it, we're doubling our investment, because the soul of this company doesn't live in spreadsheets. It lives in ideas, in people, in you. Cut to David Chen. Steps onto the stage. Eleanor places a hand on his shoulder. David Chen will serve as our new Chief Executive Officer. Applause breaks out. This time, it's real. Not polite, not political, just trust. Next, a notice goes up on employee boards. Company-wide profit-sharing program launches next quarter. A young engineer stares at it, grinning in disbelief. Is this actually happening? An older employee whispers. Finally, final shot of the montage. Eleanor stands in the R&D lab, the place Michael once called the heart of the company. She lays her hand on a new prototype. A young engineer looks at her with gratitude. Thank you, he says softly. Eleanor just smiles. No need to thank me, just keep dreaming big. The darkness has lifted. The air inside Vance Tower no longer smells of fear and calculation. It breathes hope, renewal. A new culture is rising, one where every voice counts. Night fell over Manhattan. The city's lights flickered through the thick glass of the 50th floor. In the CEO's office, once belonging to Michael Vance, Eleanor stood alone. She didn't turn on the lights. Only the glow of the city illuminated the space, reflecting off the glass wall behind her and the solid walnut desk in front. Everything was just as it had been. The vintage Hamilton watch, the small brass figurine, and a picture frame that had sat face down for years. Eleanor walked slowly, letting her fingers brush the desk's surface. The wood was cold, but familiar. She pulled the leather chair back and sat down. It felt like stepping into memory. She reached for the frame and turned it over. The photo showed her and Michael on the first day they opened the company in a small garage in Brooklyn. Michael was grinning ear to ear. She, hands covered in machine grease, tried to strike a serious pose. The photo had faded with time, but the light in their eyes was as vivid as ever. A single tear slipped quietly from the corner of her eye. Not bitter, not sorrowful, just a quiet release. You see this, Michael? They tried to tear down everything we built, but it's still standing. And now I'll keep building more. She stood and walked to the bookshelf. From it, she pulled an old document box and opened it. Inside was the original hand-drawn sketch of the AI system Michael once dreamed of creating. She lifted the paper, folded it gently, and placed it into the center drawer of the desk, like returning a flame to its hearth. As she stepped into the hallway, the motion sensor lights flicked on. A young employee passed by and, recognizing her, hesitated. "You're still here this late?" he asked. Eleanor smiled, just checking if the company's still breathing steadily. He chuckled and walked on, no longer stiff with anxiety. At Vance Tower, now, leadership was no longer a ghost behind a boardroom table. It was someone walking the halls, eyes still wet, but hands steady. Back in the office, Eleanor switched off the lights. She stepped to the window and looked out over the city. Millions of lights ahead, each one a story, a dream, an opportunity. And she knew this was only the beginning. No one called her the widow anymore. No one mocked her shirts or her coffee trays. Eleanor Vance was no longer a ghost. She was the keeper of the flame. The story you just heard wasn't about power or prestige. It was about an ordinary woman who walked back into a place that once belonged to her, was ignored, humiliated, yet never backed down. Because she didn't come to be seen, she came to reclaim what should never have been lost: decency, loyalty, and the legacy of a good man. We live in a world where a person's worth is often measured by title's appearance or a paycheck. But Eleanor showed us something different. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to stand firm at the right time, in the right way, and the truth will speak for itself. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever stayed silent because you thought your voice wouldn't matter, then remember this: some battles require patience more than strength. And sometimes, if you still believe in what's right, you haven't lost. Thank you for spending time with Toch Story. If this story made you think, feel, or simply pause for a moment in your busy day, hit subscribe to stay on this journey with us. We're here to tell stories that make you feel something, and hopefully, somewhere in them, you'll find a piece of yourself. See you in the next video on Toch Story.